Western Mexico was ruled by the Tarascan civilization, also known as the Purépecha, after their language, which established an empire that would put it at odds with the Aztecs, another significant Mesoamerican civilization of the post-classic era. With its capital at Tzintzuntzan on Lake Pátzcuaro, the Tarascan state ruled over an empire that was second only to the Aztec Empire in size, spanning over 75,000 square kilometers. Origins in culture. The archaeological record and oral tradition of the region, particularly that found in the Relación de Michoacán, a work written by the Franciscan friar Jerónimo de Alcala in the middle of the 16th century CE, have been used to piece together the history of the Tarascan civilization. Although the Purépecha culture had a history spanning more than 2 millennia, the Tarascans owed a cultural debt to the earlier Bajío and Michoacán tribal civilizations. The Tarascans were centered in the lake basins of Zacapu, Quetzeo, and Pátzcuaro in central and northern Michoacán, which translates to Place of the Fishmasters, present-day western Mexico. By the Middle Post-Classic period, 1000 to 1100 to 1350 CE, Purépecha society had advanced from the late pre-classic period, 150 BCE to 350 CE, to a more complex culture with a high degree of political centralization and social stratification. The Huacusecha of the Chichimec ethnic group were the most significant tribe, according to the Relación. Around 1325 CE, Tariacuri, the chief of the Huacusecha, founded the first capital at Pátzcuaro. The Tarascan state now possessed twice as much territory as it had in the past, and as a result, more corn, obsidian, basalt, and pottery were produced and traded. Many low-lying sites were abandoned as a result of the lake's rising level in the Pátzcuaro basin, and competition for resources grew increasingly intense. The Zacapu's higher lands also saw a significant increase in population, with only 13 sites housing 20,000 people. Although there was a general instability among the ruling class and a rise in local state rivalries during this time, the groundwork for the Great Tarascan Empire had now been laid. Tzintzuntzan. The Tarascan capital and largest settlement was Tzintzuntzan, on the northeast arm of Lake Pátzcuaro, from the late post-classic period, 1350 to 1520 CE, also referred to as the Tariacuri phase in this context. Through a highly centralized and hierarchical political structure, the Tarascans also ruled over more than 90 cities surrounding the lake. The population of the basin reached 80,000 by 1522 CE, whereas Tzintzuntzan had 35,000 residents. The capital served as the seat of the king or Khazans and the administrative, commercial, and religious hub of the Tarascan Empire. In order to make such a large population sustainable on local agriculture, extensive irrigation and terracing projects were implemented. However, substantial imports of goods and materials were still required. A system of tributes and a network of local markets made sure that there was an adequate supply of necessities, but there was also a ready supply of labor, pottery, shells, and metals, especially gold and silver ingots, to meet demand. Fruit, vegetables, flowers, tobacco, prepared foods, handicrafts, and raw materials like copper, bronze, and obsidian alloys were all purchased and sold at these bustling marketplaces. In the Balsas Basin and Jalisco, the state regulated the extraction and smelting of gold and silver. Skilled artisans, who most likely lived in the Tzintzuntzan Palace complex, produced goods using these valuable resources. Evidence of secondary and tertiary administrative centers is consistent with some evidence of independent gold and silver production in the southwest and southeast regions. The Tarascans also imported green, turquoise, and rock crystal stones, while they obtained cotton, cacao, salt, and exotic feathers from local tribute. The most significant manufacturers of copper, tin bronze, and copper alloy bells used in ceremonial dances in Mesoamerica were the Tarascans. The Tarascan state also had authority over forests, fishing, copper and obsidian mines, land distribution, and general craft workshops. The extent of control is unclear, though, and it's possible that traditional tribal leaders and local communities gave the royals access to these resources. Despite being politically subject to Tzintzuntzan, these various ethnic groups within the empire preserved their own language and local identities. However, during times of war, the supply of warriors supplemented their regular tribute to their Tarascan overlords. Three categories of Tarascan nobility were distinguished by the Relación de Michoacán: royalty, upper nobility, and lower nobility, the Huacusecha elite. The capital and the holy site of Ahuatzio, which had actually been the Tarascan capital in the past, were the residences of royalty. The Relación tells the story of a Tarascan king's funeral, in which 40 male slaves, his 7 favorite female slaves, his cook, wine bearer, toilet attendant, and finally the doctor who failed to save his life, are sacrificed to join the deceased ruler in the land of the dead. Faith, the supreme high priest, who oversaw a hierarchical priestly class, was the head of the Tarascan religion. It was easy to identify priests because they wore tobacco gourds around their necks. According to Tarascan religion, the Pátzcuaro Basin is the center of the universe, or at least the source of its power. The earth, the sky, and the underworld were the 3 components of the universe. The most significant god, Kurikaweri, the sun god, ruled the sky. Querawapari, the earth mother goddess, was his wife. The moon and sea goddess Zaratenga was their most significant child. Additionally, it appears that the Tarascans transformed or blended earlier local deities with entirely Tarascan deities. Furthermore, the official Tarascan pantheon typically included the gods of the vanquished tribes. Pyramids were constructed in honor of the Tarascan gods, 5 at Tzintzintlan and 5 at Ihuatzio, and Kurikaweri was worshipped by burning wood, offering human sacrifice, and letting blood. The lack of popular Mesoamerican deities like the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl and the rain god Tlaloc was a peculiar aspect of the Tarascan religion. The Tarascans used an 18-month solar year with 20-day months, but they did not use the 260-day calendar. Architecture and art. The monumental constructions known as Yakata, which combine circular and rectangular stepped pyramids, are a distinctive aspect of Tarascan late post-classical architecture. There were regular rectangular pyramids as well as keyhole-shaped ones. 5 of these structures are situated on a massive 440-meter platform at Tzintzintlan. The Yakata were initially confronted with tightly fitting volcanic stone slabs, and excavations within them have uncovered artifact-rich tombs. Like in many other Mesoamerican cultures, sacrificial offerings, or chacmuls, were placed in front of the Yakata sculptures. Another example of a Mesoamerican ballgame court can be found at Ihuatzio. Tarascan pottery was also notable for its highly decorated tripod bowls, miniature vessels, pipes with long stems, and spouted jars with spur-shaped handles, which occasionally took the shape of plants and animals. The Tarascans were also very good at working with metal, particularly gold and silver. They were also skilled artisans in obsidian, particularly in the areas of labret and earspool jewelry, which was inlaid with turquoise and covered in gold sheet. The danger of the Aztecs. Eventually, the Tarascans' modern, growing empires and those of their southern and western neighbors, the Aztecs, faced off directly for resources and territory. These 2 powerful Mesoamerican nations did, in fact, somewhat balance one another out. A north-south frontier between the Lerma and Balsas rivers, guarded by strategically positioned fortifications to command the vulnerable valleys, was agreed upon when the Tarascans, possibly using deceit and sabotage, drove the Aztecs to within 50 miles of Tenochtitlan, present-day Mexico City, in the 1470s CE. The Tarascans proceeded with their expansion strategy elsewhere after securing this border. The fortress of Acámbaro is the best archaeological example of Tarascan military innovation and power. The Tarascan state's ability to withstand the powerful Aztec Empire's attacks is explained by fortresses like this one, their military tactics, and the employment of metal weapons. There is some evidence of trade between the 2 civilizations despite their hostilities, particularly at key locations like the frontier trade city of Taximaroa. Local tribes also served as middlemen in the border buffer zones. However, only a few pottery vessels discovered in the respective trading partners' territory provide an archaeological record of artistic style exchange. The Tarascans, who had previously rejected an appeal for assistance from the Aztecs, reached a comparatively amicable agreement with the new Mesoamerican rulers and were reduced to a vassal state when the Spaniards arrived in Michoacán in 1522 CE.